And now for our feature presentation.
He'll be fine on the mountain.
JB and Darren on the JB and Goldwater Show.
Line drive right field, base hit. South Carolina wins the College World Series. Watson, touchdown. Hunter Renfrow. He got him, and it's all over. Coastal Carolina rules the roost. They win the championship. And South Carolina has won the national championship.
The Citadel baseball team has done it again, but this time the Bulldogs beat one of the top teams in the country. They are giant killers. Get the ball to Bennett. He does.
Gamecocks are in the Final Four.
All right, greetings and a good Wednesday afternoon, and welcome aboard the JB and Goldwater Show, live, loud, and online, and very proudly presented by Motley Rice, driven by Stokes Volkswagen. Find them at stokesvw.com. Find us on the JB and Goldwater app. You should download that, have it in your phone. You can watch and listen to us anywhere you go. You can always chime in there as well, and we will get those comments on the air. Of course, the Share Healthcare chat lines are available, and you can post your whatever you've got to say in there, and Darren will put it right there on the screen. For those that watch, you see it. For those that listen, we'll read it to you, and we will have some fun throughout the next couple of hours. Follow us on social media at JB and Goldwater, individually at Sports Media JB, and at Darren Goldwater. Coming up today, JC Sherbert will walk us through the process of the hiring of Lamont Paris as the next basketball coach at South Carolina. He'll be here within the half hour, and he'll spend as much time as he wants to spend with us, as always. And we will get into some spring football with him as well. Speaking, by the way, of South Carolina, we now have the note from the athletics department that a meeting has been scheduled for noon tomorrow. Make sure this is right. Yep, noon tomorrow for approval of contract for athletics coach. I think we all know that's Lamont Paris, the next basketball coach, or the basketball coach at the University of South Carolina. So probably after that sometime, I'm not sure if they'll schedule the PC for tomorrow or Friday, but Gamecock Nation will be introduced to their new head guy in the next, I would say, 48 hours or so, and we'll go from there. Quick note, if any of you happen to miss it, Darren and I have kind of talked about it or hinted at it a couple of times this week. We're actually not going to be on the air tomorrow, and we're not going to be on the air Friday either, and it's my fault because I'm taking my kids to the mountains for a few days, and we're going to get out of town, and we got a bunch of family coming in April. So I thought, well, I'll get out of town and have a guys weekend. And that turned out to where nobody could go. And somehow I'm going to be chasing 3-year-olds up and down a mountain for 4 days. So that's okay. We won't be here Thursday and Friday. We think y'all can probably manage without us, but we will be back on Monday. But we're here till 2 today. So chime in as you may. We've got some NCAA previews to get to with the Sweet 16 getting kicked off tomorrow night. And we have a wrap-up in college baseball. I told you yesterday, Darren, I said, I got a feeling it's going to be a wacky night. And it was a wacky night for sure for the two proudest programs here in the Palmetto State.
Oh, so we'll get to that. The guy for Tennessee who's throwing 102 and 103 and whatever else he's throwing.
Ben Joyce.
Yeah. Were these highlights I'm watching earlier today? They're from last night. They had Butler last night, didn't they?
Right.
This guy.
Yeah. Told you, dude. Yeah, it's unbelievable.
There was a pitch yesterday. He unleashed 102 straight off the ump's mask. The catcher missed it, man, and it was 102 to the face.
I didn't see that. But
It's Friedman, the pitching ninja. Just go through his Twitter feed. It's right on there. He also popped his belt buckle because there are still shots of the rotation, and you wonder why. Jamie knows this. You wonder why he throws so hard. The hip's clear, the arm's still back, and then it just snaps through. And there are photos of pants that clearly fit this guy. He's wearing them, and like the hips are all out of place, and everything is square, and the arm is like middle of his back. before it whips around. It's something.
Dude, he's like today's version of Rookie of the Year because he had Tommy John, and then he comes back from Tommy John, and he's humping it. I mean, he was throwing, I can't remember what it was, low to mid-90s when he was at Walter State. And then he transferred to Tennessee, and I feel like this is his third year in the program. I feel like he transferred there and then got hurt in the 2000 shortened season and then ended up sitting out all of last year, maybe started to kind of get into it. But he's pitching this year. I mean, the Gamecocks saw him last weekend. I've seen 95. I've seen 95. I've seen I've seen 95. I'm trying to think the hardest I've ever seen. I've seen 96, 97, if the gun was right. And it's hard to hit. If you don't see it often, you can't hit it. But if you're in the big leagues, I mean, if you asked a guy like Smoke, he'll tell you he'd rather see 95, 96, 97 than 85. Like those guys, it's just different, man. I mean, it's hard, but you see it a lot. Your eyes adjust. You get used to it, and then you do your homework. You get a scouting report, and you sit on a fastball. And if they make a lot of guys who throw so hard, Darren, you know this. I mean, they'll make mistakes because they're throwing it in the upper to mid to upper 90s, and you drive it from there. But I've never met a soul on earth who's seen 103, and I don't know anybody that would want to. And I don't even know how you catch that, honestly.
The pitch that went off the umpire's mask, it wasn't that far out of the strike zone. I mean, the ump wasn't standing up. He's crouched right over the catcher, and he just missed it.
Yeah.
Right. 102, straight in the face.
Yeah. Well, that's not, I don't know if it was a cross up or if he just missed it. Did it look like he just missed it?
It looked like he just missed it. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, you would know if it was a cross up. If it was, let me tell you something. And this is why
you better not screw up your signals with 102.
That's where I was going. This whole joke of a rule that we have in baseball now, where you got a dude on the bump who can't step off without being issued a balk with runners on base. That's what you don't want. Like the guy humping 100 in there, and his catcher thinking he's got off speed coming, and then you throw 100 plus miles an hour and it hits somebody in the throat. I mean, you'll kill somebody like that, and it's all because you didn't want to step off and get a balk called on him. I mean, it's a safety issue. I don't know. I mean, that's just dangerous, man. That is dangerous stuff.
I don't know. I don't know how the ump is. There was nothing in the string of tweets updating his condition, but he went down. I mean, expectedly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would have probably tapped out then. I mean, I've umpired my share of games. I've never done anything like that ever. So. Hope the guy's okay, and Tennessee is really dang good. By the way, this weekend, you have two different polls ranking them number one, but Tennessee and Ole Miss play this weekend in Oxford. Yeah. That's going to be a wild scene. They're already sold out at Swayze on Friday and Saturday. Looks like Sunday's going to be a sellout as well. I mean, that is what it's all about. So if you get a chance, check out. I'm not sure if it's on the SEC network or any. I don't know. A lot of times the early conference games are not yet on the major networks. They might get one in there on Sunday or something like that. But mostly, I mean, I know it'll be on the SEC Network Plus or ESPN Plus. So if you get a chance to check out that series, you want to see an atmosphere, check that out. Swayze Field in Oxford this weekend. When the ball leaves the yard for the good guys, those drinks go flying, man. So that's going to be a lot of fun. I mean, Tennessee is done. And they might be the best team in the conference, Darren. I haven't seen every team. I've watched a ton of SEC baseball. Haven't seen as much of Arkansas as I'd like to see. But based on what I have seen, I think they're the best team in the league, and that makes you the best team in the country right now. But if Ole Miss can get them this weekend, then they're going to be able to stake claim back, right there at number one. So we'll see. We'll see. Yep. Wingo said on Monday he thinks that Tennessee is light years better than Texas. Yep. And he's seen them both. So, all right, it is 12:09 on a Wednesday afternoon. Speaking of baseball, last night around the state, let me give you the scores. Believe me, we're getting to South Carolina in just a minute. And I have a stat that ain't gonna make any of you feel good if you're a Carolina fan. Keep an eye this year. We mentioned it yesterday. Keep an eye on a couple of upstate teams, Wofford and USC Upstate. They did play last night. Wofford wins the game 10-6. They're 14-8 are the Terriers, and they're 10-2 in their last 12. So congratulations to Wofford for getting a nice win there. Upstate's having a great year. They're 14-7 now overall. They've done a nice job building that program up in Spartanburg. CSU hit the road for Mercer, and they got beat 10-2. Charleston Southern has just been all over the map. They're 10-13 now, 23 games into the season. Coastal Carolina and Clemson last night, for anybody that missed it, if you don't know who won the game, let me tell you what happened in the top of the first inning, and then you tell me who won the game. Coastal was the visiting team. Single, stolen base, HBP, throwing error, single, HBP, walk, fly out, 3-run homer, single, walk, single, walk, single, stolen base. Who you think won the game? Coastal won the game, 16-7. It was 10-0 after the top of the first inning at Doug Kingsmore last night.
That's probably about the time I got a text from a Clemson friend saying not wonderful things about the Clemson baseball program. I said, I'm not paying attention. Is it rough? And he goes, 10-0.
Yeah, dude, it was bad. It was bad. Yeah, it was bad. It was bad. And then they gave up 5 in the third, and that didn't make it any easier. They scored 7, but when you give up 16, scoring 7 ain't gonna get it done. So Clemson is now 15-5, 1-2 in the league. They got Winthrop tonight, and then they'll hit the road for Pittsburgh. So it's an interesting stretch here for Monty Lee's Tigers. They got to get it going. They were hot. They were 14. What were they? 14-0 to start the season. They're 1-5 since. Coastal is 12-7-1, and I'm still pretty disturbed by that one tie that happened this past Sunday, 17-17, when they called it for travel in the 8th inning for Monroe to get home. College of Charleston at Georgia Southern last night. They lose 4-1. Georgia Southern's a good program. College has had a kind of a strange year. They took 2 of 3 this past weekend from ECU. They beat Texas last week. They're 12-9 overall. They've got Northeastern this weekend. Don't let that slip by you. Northeastern's got dudes. They only swept NC State in Raleigh, and they did take a game from Clemson. So they got 4 ACC wins. I think they lost 1-0 last night against Boston College. But Northeastern is going to come down. There's going to be a lot of good pitching at Rimley's Point. Rimley's Point. Hail to all the old Cougars out there, old Rimley's Point. Patriots Point, where the College of Charleston's got some dudes of their own. So it should be pitching plentiful in that series this weekend. And then, of course, what happened at the Joe last night with South Carolina losing to the Citadel 4-3. And I'll be honest with you, it wasn't shocking to me, and it wasn't shocking just because Carolina is not having a good year. Generally, 7-8 out of 10 games that they would play here are good games. That was the first win, though, for the Citadel since 2014. So it has been a while since they've beaten them at Riley Park, but there's been some dandies, and last night for the Dogs was a dandy. Look, Carolina is not very good, but hat tip to the Bulldogs. They played great. The pitching staff was really good. Defensively, they were really good. They had clutch hits. Talked to Blake this morning. He was incredibly proud of his staff. So I know we have a lot of Gamecocks around here who are frustrated, but I have to do what's right, Darren. And what's right is giving the Citadel credit. And let's give even more credit to the Dogs as they have George Mason coming in this weekend. They've won 4 straight. Through 20 games, Tony Scholes' Bulldogs are 14-6, ladies and gentlemen. So, look, they got some holes, and they're going to have some issues at times this year, but they're 14-6, the best start in a long time for Citadel baseball. So big-time hat tip to what's going on right now down at Riley Park. And what's going on in Columbia is not good.
No, but for the Citadel, before we get there, for the Citadel, this is one that gives them confidence, right? Because, what's going on in Columbia isn't good, but that doesn't diminish.
No.
The Citadel beat South Carolina. To these guys, a lot of them, you know this, I know this, a lot of them, they view South Carolina as one of 2 ways. Either I should have been on that field or like playing for South Carolina, or I'm not and I need to go stick it to. It's a big deal for those kids, bigger than the coaching staff, really, because for them, they understand they got to get through the Southern Conference, and that's actually what really matters. But you couple in They're 14-6 with a win over South Carolina right before you get into conference play. And Skoll and Cooper both told us, like, we think this could be the year where we kind of get back to the Citadel way and the Citadel tradition. And the way that game was playing out, yeah, it had a feel of this is one the Citadel can win.
Yeah, I had a feeling after it was 3-2 in the 7th. I thought to myself, yeah, Gamecocks, they're probably gonna get beat today. And it was unlike Michael Braswell to have a tough outing as he did in the 9th inning. He's had a really good year on the mound as the quote unquote closer for Carolina. Here's another freshman moment for him. We mentioned it a lot earlier in the season that it's, people, this isn't a shot at anybody. Believe me, I don't understand a lot of things in sports, and I need to be taught how to understand them. But I do know baseball, and that's one of the reasons why we brought it up to Scotty and other guys. Like, you're going to have a freshman moment. Mm-hmm. You're going to have multiple freshman moments. It doesn't matter how good you are. It's going to happen. And how do you overcome that? And this past weekend at the plate was a welcome to the SEC, big dog type moment for Michael Braswell in Knoxville. I mean, he was 0 for 10 with 6 strikeouts, and I think that carried over to last night. And he had his first blown save of the season. And so now, if you're the staff at South Carolina, you don't have a lot of bright spots, but this kid, he's got it. Now you gotta get him out of it. So how are you going to ease him out of it with Vanderbilt coming to town this weekend? I don't have that answer. That Mark Kingston and staff need to figure that out. But you got to find a way to make sure he's forgotten about what's happened in the last 4 games and get him going again, because you don't really have a prayer without him producing both on the mound and in the field. I hate to say that, but they're just not good enough. By the way, I haven't even mentioned Crosby Jones's name, and that's ridiculous. Shout out to Crosby Jones for the walk-off single last night. And in the bottom of the 9th, when you walk the first 2 guys and then you balk and then you give up a couple singles and another walk, you're going to lose. So that's what happened. Yeah. Carolina got beat. And Darren, you ready for this? And I didn't go back longer than this. Y'all ready, Carolina fans? They're 20 games into the season. They're 10-10, right? This is the first time in at least 23 seasons that they've had multiple 4-game or more losing streaks. And they've only played 20 games. Yeah, that ain't good. Since the turn of the century, it hasn't happened twice in the season where you lose 4 or more. So they've had losing streaks where they've lost 4 or 5. I think 7 they lost in 2019. That's the most. They've had 3-game. You get swept sometimes in the SEC. That's going to happen. But not 4 or more twice in the same season, at least since the year 2000. So it is it is not good right now in Columbia. They are 3-9, Darren, in their last 12 games.
It's rough, right? I mean, even the glimmer of hope against Texas, to follow that up with, I'm not going to say inept offensively at Tennessee. I mean, you're facing arms, you're facing dudes, but it didn't look great. And then to come down to South Carolina, come down to the Citadel and lose, right? I mean, that's the way South Carolina's playing right now. We know anything can happen in midweeks. They can't afford to lose these midweek games. And last night, I thought last night was somewhat indicative of the team. I haven't watched them nearly as much as you, but my first thought, and I was watching there in the 9th, my first thought when Braswell came in and went walk, walk, balk, it was before the balk, actually, that just confirmed it, was, oh, this weekend is in his head. And then there was the balk. I said, okay. And at no point are you going a different way. I understand you're the closer, but that once that happened, there was very little possibility in my eyes that he suddenly rights the ship, because he wasn't right. And just looking at the 2 teams on the field, I mean, it was clear the difference in athlete when you watch Tennessee and South Carolina. The difference wasn't very clear watching South Carolina and the Citadel. Also something that jumped out to me and was somewhat concerning to me.
Yeah, man. Look, Darren, you start to do some math here as to what could happen this year. And I mean, the way that I've always approached an SEC season, unless you have already proven who you are. So, for instance, there clearly have been teams at South Carolina where you knew, all right, this team can win 18 plus games in the league, and they should. They're that good. You look at this year's SEC, that is absolutely true for Tennessee. It is absolutely true for Vanderbilt. It is absolutely true for Arkansas. It is absolutely true for Ole Miss. And I would stop there. When you get by the top 3 or 4 teams in the league in the SEC, go back. It doesn't take hard to do the research. Go back and look at the standings historically. You if you're a fan, I'm not talking about if you're Mark Kingston or any other coach out there. If you're a fan and you're trying to predict the season in this league, I always say give yourself 15 losses. Just give yourself 15 losses. If it's worse, that sucks. If it's better, you're at least a 2 seed.
Yep.
If not a 1.
Yep.
In the postseason. But give yourself 15 losses because that's the goal, is to get to 500 in the league. And then after that, you never really want to give yourself more than 4 or 5 in the non-conference, because in a 56-game season, if you go 15 in the league and then you got 5 in the non-con, you do the math. You're 36-20. You're at least a 2 seed, if not a 1 seed. Anything more than that, and you're a 2, then you're hovering on the 3 line. So if you want to get where you're going in the league, I always look at 15-5. How do you stay at 20 or less losses in the regular season? Anything better? That's gravy, baby. Well, they already have 7 non-conference losses, and they've only played 3 games in the SEC. And the SEC this year is as good as it's been. And I get it. They also played Texas. They could have played Belmont that weekend and probably fared better. Okay, I understand that. But they won 2 against Texas. So you're talking about a win there. They got swept by Clemson. They got beat by Greensboro. They got beat by Xavier. They got beat by the Citadel. I mean, it is what it is. This isn't me trashing Mark Kingston. I know what everybody out there is saying. It's time to fire Mark Kingston and Ray Tanner and Jesus and everybody else. Like, I get it. I understand where you're coming from. I'm not telling you not to say that. I get it. I'm just pointing out the facts. And when you start to do the math here, Darren, you could way long gone to any type 40-win year, which is the expectation. And you're starting to see real numbers where you go, man, we're going to come up well short of anything that is acceptable at South Carolina. And if that does happen, what do we do? And I think I know what everybody's response to that question is.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, the response to that question will be an overwhelming response to that question. But where you finished that thought was exactly where I was going to pick it up. I mean, we're not at the point of, hey, can you compete for a 2? We're at the point of, can you compete to make it? And just based on the numbers, you laid out right there, and knowing what's in front of them, that's a realistic conversation. I mean, that's the only realistic conversation right now. It's not, can you compete for a 2? It's, can you compete to make the tournament? And that's where they are right now.
Yeah. I mean, it just is what it is. I mean, their job on staff up there, Mark and Coach Kaye and Justin Parker and Scott Wingo, by the way, they're all just outstanding people. Their job is to worry about the next game. And the next game is Friday night against Thursday night, tomorrow night, against the Vanderbilt Commodores at 8:00. All right. That's their job. Worry about that game. And then when that game's over, they got to go a day at a time. I mean, that's how you, but the rest of us don't have to worry about coaching the team and doing all the stuff in the locker room. Your and my job is to talk about what we see on the outside and to do our very best to be fair about it.
Yep.
And I think we're being pretty fair, but they're not even close to meeting expectations. 500 is not going to get you in the postseason. And,
yeah, that's where it is.
So, I mean, and Darren, you mentioned what's coming. Everybody's talking about Vanderbilt this weekend. Well, yeah, it's true. But it's also the SEC, and they're going to have to go to Missouri next week, who historically, isn't very good, but on the road in the SEC, anywhere you go is difficult. And then you're going to come home and you got Georgia, and, Georgia's ranked 17th in the country. And then you got Ole Miss at home, and they're ranked number 1 in the country. It just doesn't. It's not good. And I tell you one thing that, and I'm kind of rambling on, but I mentioned just a little while ago, Darren, you want to see what it looks like? Cut on TV this weekend and watch Tennessee and watch Ole Miss. play, not just from the perspective of great baseball, but what we get so excited about in February, college baseball. There's something special about it, and you're going to see that at Swayze. It's an environment that you can't explain unless you've been in it, and many of us out there have been in them in Columbia, South Carolina, a lot over the years, and it's depressing to me to think about the fact that the number 1 ranked Texas Longhorns are already in town. The number 4 Vanderbilt Commodores are in town. The number 1 Ole Miss Rebels are coming to town. And it's going to be a very sparse crowd there for the top-ranked programs in the country coming to your venue. Whereas there was a time and place where when you were ranked that high coming into Columbia, you didn't want any part of that. No, sir. Because that team was really good that you were going to play and the environment was going to be outstanding. And right now it is anything but that.
It's tough. I mean, it all is coupled in together. And that's, unfortunately, that's the current state of Gamecocks baseball. That's where we are 20 games into this season. And yeah, I agree with you. The team has to sit there and say one at a time. They can't possibly go down the road that we're going down right now. They can't. Because if they do, they're going to get swallowed up by a lot of bad thoughts. And none of that's going to be good.
Yeah.
But one at a time. They can change it. Maybe.
Yeah.
One at a time. But that's the state of Gamecocks baseball. And it's a lot different than when I was the radio guy for the Citadel going down to Founders Park. I think it was Carolina Stadium then. Whatever it was then. It's a lot different because I knew what we were walking into. We knew what we were walking into. Regular season and postseason. And it's different.
You were there for that regional in 2010, and that was a regional. I get it, but that was every weekend back then.
That was energy. That was energy in that place.
Absolutely, and it absolutely can be again. I mean, there's the fan base at South Carolina is so fierce right now over what's going on, so frustrated because not only are they used to winning, they want to win. They support the program, and I did see Greg said, "Look, hey," and that's a good comment. I don't want to fire Ray, but if I were him, I wouldn't want the job anymore. And I said just as much last night to somebody. He says nothing he does will ever be good enough anymore for his critics, which are many. If I was Coach Tanner, I wouldn't want to do it either. But Coach Tanner probably isn't just going to walk away from something. I'll say this, and I'm not. And I know we got to go. We got JC coming up. I'm not. If you want to listen to guys or ladies in media, kind of like we are, call for firings and things like that. Listen to that pony in the upstate or knows nothing about anything around here or some of these other doofuses. All right, I'm not going to do that. But I'll say that if there is a change in South Carolina, which by the way, after they fired Coach Holbrook, kind of already set the standard for how much time you're going to give somebody and what that time should look like as to whether you're going to make a change or not. I mean, Holbrook had a much better tenure than Coach Kingston is having, and he got fired. If there is, I'll tell you this. This I don't even. How would I say this, Darren, without getting in trouble somewhere? I'm not even sure that there'd really be much of a search for the next baseball coach at South Carolina because it's a lot different from 5 years ago, the candidate pool and the candidate pool that is interested. And you'll be okay. A blind squirrel could probably figure out who the next guy would be from that group. So, and they'd all be really good, but you'll see what I'm saying if it gets there.
Yep.
If that makes sense. I mean, I'm not trying to be, this sounds sneaky, man. I don't want it to sound like that.
No, look, I mean,
the point.
The bottom line is where the program is, it would have to be a big swing. And if you miss on a big swing, another big swing, and then another big swing, and then another big, wouldn't be.
And they're not going to miss on all three of the ones.
It wouldn't be right. It wouldn't be, missed on a couple big ones. Let's see what else is out there. It would have a very different feel. Speaking of different feel, we got to get this in. Saturday at the Collectors Corner Citadel Mall, Michael Roth. Yeah, remember when everything was really good? Michael Roth's going to be at the Citadel Mall at the Collector's Corner this Saturday. Your own item you can bring. It's a $10 autograph. A Major League Baseball, $35. A photo, 8x10 is $15. 12 to 2 this Saturday at Collector's Corner at the Citadel Mall.
Oh, so they stole our time slot just on Saturday.
Yeah, exactly.
That's fantastic. Roth's a great guy, and obviously we know what he did in his career at Carolina. And he is still incredibly passionate about the program. Anybody that's never met him is going to love him when you meet him.
Yep.
And that's awesome. I will be in the mountains, so I can't go. But go, guys.
But he'll be here.
Go. Yeah, if you're in the Low Country, do that. Go to the Citadel Mall and go see Michael Roth. That's really cool. Really cool. Great story, as we all know. All right, it is 30 here on a weird, dreary Wednesday afternoon. But it won't be dreary when we return because JC Shurburtt, owner of the Big Spur, pops in. We'll walk through the Lamont Paris hiring. Anybody remember, like a couple weeks before Frank Martin was let go at South Carolina, JC Shurburtt said, keep an eye on Lamont Paris? Nailed it. He'll tell you all about it when we get back.
This is Mike Mazzell for Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate Road. You know what happens when you sell record numbers of new vehicles? That's right, we take in record numbers of local trades. Despite what the news is saying, quality pre-owned vehicles really aren't that hard to find. You just need to know where to look. Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate and on the web at stokesvw.com. We've got over 1,200 pre-owned cars, trucks, SUVs, and all at a fraction of the price when new. Every vehicle has been inspected and reconditioned, many with the balance of factory warranty. Best of all, at Stokes Volkswagen, you don't need perfect credit to get approved for a quality pre-owned vehicle. And we'll take any trade in any condition, even if you owe thousands more than it's worth. Don't forget, we'll buy your car even if you don't buy a car from us. You're going to love our pre-owned selection, I guarantee it. So come see us today at Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate or stokesvw.com.
Peace and love at Stokes VW.
Negative trade equity finance to new loan, subject to lender approval.
People don't like to get stuck in traffic, stuck in the mud, stuck at work. And two others you probably don't think much about, stuck with a big medical bill or stuck with a healthcare program that doesn't fit who you are. Experience true medical freedom with Share Healthcare. More affordable, more options, user-friendly, and biblically sound. You can join right now. Explore a new way to show you care with Share Healthcare. Join us today at sharehealthcare.com. sharehealthcare.com.
Wando Power Equipment, the trusted home of Hustler zero-turn residential and commercial mowers. There is nobody more trusted in South Carolina than our friends from Wando Power Equipment. They've been providing elite commercial and residential service for over 30 years. Landscape Services have turned to their selection of Hustler zero-turn mowers like the Raptor. Bigger, stronger, faster, and the most durable Raptor Hustler has ever designed. Located on Daniel Island and online at wandopower.com. Wando Power Equipment, owned by the Price family, the home of Hustler zero-turn mowers, rentals, service, and specializing in family and friendship.
It's the best time of the year on the sports calendar, and there's no better place to soak it all in than your spring headquarters. Dog and Duck with 3 area locations in Bell Hall, Park West, and Clemens Ferry Road. Until May, $5 pints of Wicked Weed Brews and Devil's Backbone, again, until May. Patio seating, happy hour daily, family bingo on Monday, the Duck Truck Double Burger every Wednesday, rib night on Friday. It's the place to be for the best wings in town, the best sports everywhere you look. Dog and Duck, 3 area locations, Bell Hall, Park West, and Clemens Ferry Road.
Your online radio. The new online radio that makes you happy.
I got honeybees beating on my screen door. I got a little buzz in my head. So cause we come from a long line of sinners like me. La-di-da, la-di-da, la-di-da.
And you were listening to the JB and Goldwater Show, live, loud, and online.
Don't cry for me when I'm gone. Just put a quarter in the jukebox and sing me back home.
I mean, We do this to ourselves every week, JC. We never want Darren to cut it off. Just let
it keep going, man.
I know.
I got my tickets for Milwaukee Memorial Day weekend.
Oh God.
Yeah, my girlfriend now, we kind of our first date was in Nashville, Memorial Day weekend 2019. And we went and saw the Chief. And he set a record for attendance at Nissan Stadium, broke Taylor Swift's record.
I remember that.
And great show. And so we're going to kind of have a little reunion at the I guess what is it now, the One Hell of a Night tour or something like that.
I could so two thoughts on that. One, you were brave to have your first date in Nashville. That's the last place on earth I'd have my first date, because it'd probably be my last one with whoever. And
I was pretty brave.
That's pretty brave. And my second thought is I could only imagine if I ever get a chance to interview the Chief one day, that will be one of the questions I ask him. Is funny how things work out. You got kicked off of the Rascal Flatts tour and replaced by a girl named Taylor Swift. And then years later, you blew her attendance record out of the water.
Yeah. And look, I don't know that if Taylor played there again, that she wouldn't maybe bring it. But I mean, like is she really a country artist anymore?
I don't know. She's just an artist.
I would say nay to that.
Did they collaborate on something? Because I was in a.
Nah,
all right. I trust you two.
I mean, they're both kind of like great songwriters, and I mean, they're kind of. One day, everything kind of comes around in circles, but not right now.
No, I think Taylor Swift deserves a ton of credit because she did do it her way. She got transitioned into a lot of things that she probably wasn't by the business, but Chief did it his way and only his way. And anybody tried to tell him to do it another way, he told them to go F themselves. And that's why he got kicked off the tour.
Yeah,
but it all worked out because Rascal Flatts can't hold his water these days. So,
oh my God. Yeah. I've never been a Rascal Flatts guy. It's just not a,
no.
I mean, I'll go Keith Urban over Rascal Flatts, really.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Yeah, neither one's really my cup of tea, but it's all good, man. Yeah. All right, well, JC, before I go any further, I do want to read this from the Twitter page of one of the great reporters in this state with the Post and Courier, Jeff Hartzell, who just reported a few minutes ago that it looks like the Citadel is targeting Ed Conroy to return to the Lowcountry as the next head basketball coach of the Dogs. You know the Conroys. Darren, what do you think about that?
I'm surprised that Ed wanted it back, but you can't make a much better hire than that. I mean,
okay,
my God, he had the best season in Citadel history, and he's a Citadel grad, and he understands. I remember one of the things he told me as the radio guy, he's like, when these kids come to practice, you can't kill these kids in practice, right? You got to be a different type of person. He understands how to manipulate to the best of his ability the Citadel system, and he's already proven that he can do it. So Citadel fans are going to welcome this back with open arms. And he's a good dude, man. I enjoyed my time on the road with him. I enjoyed the coaches shows with him. It's good to have him back in the Lowcountry if it's true. It's long rumored. I mean, he's been the favorite.
By the way, it'd be interesting to see, Darren, if that's the case, if he brings JR back to the Citadel. He was just with us last Friday.
Yeah, that would be a natural fit. JR was on that team.
That would be something special. Go ahead, JC.
I just thinking about the Lords of Discipline and my losing season when a Conroy and the Citadel's mentioned. So it's one of my favorite authors. God rest his soul.
Well, we appreciate that. Don't know what else to say. 12:39 here.
He's related to Pat Conroy, who wrote.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. I was referencing Pat Conroy novels.
I thought somebody just died. I was like, all right.
Everybody just thinks I like sports, but
sorry. I'm so sorry. I blew it.
I should have prefaced that. I don't know that the audience caught it either. So
I apologize.
I knew where you were going with all that.
I'm like an idiot now.
Okay. In other news, by the way, Tyreek Hill is going to the Dolphins, so that's a big deal down there in Miami. Hey, Craig, I am on Cody Jinks. Your cousin, Nick Godwin, former Clemson killer, my old roommate, got me onto him, as a matter of fact, a few years ago. So I'm a Cody Jinks guy, no doubt. All right, JC, Lamont Paris. Well, they've got the BOT finally has released their board meeting info, their minutes or whatever you want to call it. So I guess tomorrow around noon, they're going to officially confirm the new head men's basketball coach in Columbia, South Carolina. And then I'm kind of guesstimating here that at some point today we'll have an email from Michael DeBates or Coach Fink or one of those guys about a PC later on tomorrow afternoon or sometime early on Friday. And then that'll be it. He'll be in Columbia and he'll be moving on. So before we kind of get back into the nuts and bolts of how it got here and where it's going, just give us your initial, we haven't talked to you this week, so your initial reaction to this hiring.
I thought it was a tone deaf hire. And I'm going to tell you why. And this is not one of my longer explanations. And I'm not saying, let's kick Ray out of the athletic department. A lot of people are feeling that way. I usually am the first one to say what's done is done and let's move forward. And I agree with that as it relates to the basketball program. I don't think Lamont Paris is a terrible coach or even a bad coach. I think he's actually really good. And I admire his pursuit of the job, what he did at Chattanooga this year, all that. Here's what I'm saying, though, as far as why the fan reaction has been what it's been. You have hires that are made. And I think if you guys have ever heard the term political capital, and you spend capital when you do that and it doesn't work out. Look, fact of life, hires don't work out. So you hire Will Muschamp, which I'll admit I was behind and I saw the logic into it. And I fought up until 2019. I was like, no, this is actually here. But you looked at the record at Florida and you had to really kind of click your heels together and wish to go back to Kansas and project and fantasize and all that, and then go back and say, well, here's what went wrong and it won't happen at South Carolina. And then some of the things that went wrong in Florida did. Lack of offense, massive injuries, that kind of thing, and it ultimately was a failure. I think that hire alone has people, with a little bit of, false PTSD. I want to be respectful to people that have PTSD, but it's kind of like it's a bad reminder. Let's just say that. Well, we've watched the baseball team this year. Now, baseball is a funny sport, JB, and you know it, and I may look like an idiot at the end of the year. But let's just say things aren't going well. Yeah. All right. And they really, when you look at Kingston's history at Illinois State and at South Florida, you look back and you go, well, Illinois State's a tough job. Won NCAA tournament his first year, never really got back. Well, South Florida's supposed to be a good job. It's in Florida, but it's not. He won, got to the tournament surprisingly, losing season, and then winning season, he got Carolina. I just, and now you see what's happening. So that's two hires. You can go back to Hyman hire, Darren Horn. He was a one shining moment hire is what I call him. 5 years at Western Kentucky, one shining moment, Sweet 16 beating two mid majors, got the Carolina job, was a failure. And that's not on Ray. I think you have to be aware of that when you're hiring a coach that, people just look at the record. 2 losing seasons at Chattanooga, 2 decent seasons. I mean, they're not looking at the fact he had the youngest team in the country his first year, but it's a one shining moment kind of hire. Combine that with the way the search went down, and that's the Sean Miller excitement. Sean Miller was definitely a candidate for the job, could have taken it, could have healed a lot of old wounds, about the hiring process. Could have, he's one of the best coaches in basketball. He decides to go back to Xavier. So then, Gates goes to Missouri. Well, you keep moving forward. And, BJ Mackey gets an interview and starts emerging as kind of the break glass in case of emergency hire. Kind of like he would have been the Shane Beamer type of hire, where he hadn't won anything, but he hadn't lost anything either, right? So you're going down the list. And then Bob Richie pulls out publicly, right? And that's got people kind of going, wow, what's going on? And there's reasons he pulled out publicly. And then, and I don't know. I have not been able to confirm through my sources that they actually did get on a plane and go to Murray, Kentucky. And I believe it to be true, though, because I trust David. I mean, David's not putting crap out there, right? And then I don't know how much they could have gotten the plane off the ground back to Columbia before he accepts LSU. Mm-hmm. And so things were, you have the history of hires that haven't worked out. And then publicly you look at it and you go, things are snowballing in a negative manner. You even have national media people, which I don't really give a rat's behind about their opinion, but it's PR, and they say it's a meandering mess. And so it basically comes down to Lamont Paris and BJ Mackey. And I called BJ Mackey the in case of emergency break glass hire. And to me, even though Lamont Paris may end up being 10 times the coach, I mean, he may take this team back to the Final Four. You just don't know. It's another crapshoot. But I think that when you look at it, BJ would have been kind of a unifying hire. Nobody's going to sit there. I mean, they're going to sit there and regret how the search went. And the people that want Reagan are going to want Reagan regardless. It doesn't matter if he hired John Calipari. And then you got the baseball situation, which is building. I just think that when you get in that situation, it's code red, and it's best to really, instead of worrying about who interviews the best and, all this stuff and breaking, I think you need to go, all right, well, you're getting your shot, buddy, because, and look, sometimes hires like that work out, folks, but sometimes hires like that don't. I mean, I think Tommy West at Clemson's a good example of that. Let's go hire one of our own and it fails. Or Mike Shula at Alabama was an example of that, where, okay, it's a mess. Let's just go hire our own. But sometimes it does. And on top of that, too, I think that you have to be aware of the history of this program. Early 80s, Frank McGuire gets forced out. That's the golden era, right? Well, did Bobby Crimmins get the job? Oh, no, we're going to go hire the Duke coach. Okay. Later on, George Felton's got the job. He gets forced out. Couldn't hire Crimmins then, but he got forced out. And, I don't know so much that I think the university abandoned the guy. I think they probably should have helped him through his issues. He's 25 games over 500, and he's a Gamecock. And there you go, Steve Newton. That's a fiasco. Well, then you had the Bobby Crimmins fiasco, and Fogler comes in, and Fogler leaves, right? Big, long, meandering basketball search, okay? And it comes down to, and remind me to bring this up again later, Dave Odom and Bobby Crimmins. See, hire Bobby Crimmins at the time. All those McGuire guys are still around. They're pissed off at the university. I'm sure Bobby Crimmins felt bad about what happened. He's ready to take the job. He obviously had more in him because he coached at College of Charleston for a while. I don't know that he had done any better than Odom record-wise. I think he'd recruited a little better. But you get down to it, and I don't know how Mike McGee felt about it, but I know how some butthurt people that are affiliated with the university felt about it. And you go with Odom, so you don't have a chance to make a unifying hire then. And then here, years later, you once again have a shot to hire one of your own. And again, the two mid-majors you've hired lost 98 games and got fired, both of them within 6 seasons. The assistant you hired the one time since all this is since McGuire was 25 games over 500. Oh, and he was a Gamecock. So there's a historical precedent there. Plus, BJ's connections to the Columbia basketball scene, which has I'm not saying the program's alienated them. I think there's been some alienation on both sides. I think they've alienated the program, but you got a chance to heal those wounds too. And healing wounds is important. Relationships are important, especially in basketball recruiting. It's not like football where you can get a new staff in there and you got shiny new things and you're like, oh, well, let's, like what Shane Beamer's doing. You need the right guy in charge to do it. Because there's been too much mismanagement of this program and too many hard feelings over the years since the McGuire era to not be aware of it. You know, Frank Martin ran into it here, okay? Mm-hmm. And you just, by the way, got rid of a guy that was averaging 17 wins a year, won 18 this year. And, I don't care what anybody says, his recruiting was about to take a turn for the better, So I think when you get down to those two guys, if you consider everything, it would have been, and I've told this to people too, on the resume, on Paris's resume, had this been his second year in the tournament at Chattanooga, second year SoCon, or even let's say they won 27 games and got upset by Furman in the SoCon finals one of the years, and then the next year they went, no issue. The trajectory is there. But I think the trajectory has been there with a lot of coaches. And that's my take on that. And I'm not, sitting here and pinning this all on Ray Tanner. But, he's the decider. And you guys know I'm a Ray guy, and I've defended him, and I've nothing but respect in the world for him. His first basketball hire, I know others were involved, but I thought that it was a hire that, they maybe should have read the room a little more. And I'm going to say that now because I have a feeling Paris is going to have a press conference. Everybody's going to calm down and be fine, see what he can do. And I encourage everybody to see what he can do and not so much attack him. I'm not saying the guy's a bad coach at all. I'm just saying that right now, with this athletic department at the University of South Carolina, with the state of things and the historical aspect of what's happened with this program, I think I would have read the room a little more and gone with Mackey, and that's how I feel about that. And so we'll see how it goes. I'm certainly not trying to throw dirt on the Lamont Paris era before it's even started. I think everybody needs to give him a chance. But my feelings on how the search went down really are a lot deeper than, oh, my God, you got turned down. It's a fiasco, all that stuff. I mean, you have people blaming Ray Tanner for leaking. And I'm going to tell everybody right now, that's nonsense. Hey, lots of information leaked about the search. Yeah, but I can tell you, it didn't come from anybody at the university. I mean, I'll tell you, it comes from agents, and it's in everybody's best interest if you're Sean Miller's agent to leak it and let Xavier know if you want him back at Xavier. It's, your best interest to leak it if you're Matt McMahon's agent or even, Lamont Paris's agent. There was nothing coming from the athletic department.
Let me ask you this. Let me throw a couple of different scenarios at you. What do you think try to be short answer because we got the break coming up and we're going to talk plenty about it, but let me just throw a couple of scenarios at you. What if they beat Illinois in the first round? What do you think the reaction to this hire would be? They lost by 1 point. What do you think if they won that game? What would the temperature be today?
Slightly less, but I still think that people would get caught up in 1-5. It's a one shining moment hire. Now maybe he goes to Sweet 16. Well, then you get the Darren Horn comparison. But I mean, who did Illinois lose to? Houston. Big difference in beating Illinois and Houston than Darren Horn, who I think beat San Diego and Drake. So yeah. Okay.
And scenario number 2. What if it was clean, crisp, and to the point? They fired Frank Martin, and then a few days later they announced the hiring of Lamont Paris. There's never a conversation to be had about Sean Miller or anybody else. They had targeted their guy. They knew who they wanted. They were confident in it. What type of message would that have sent? And what would the temperature be?
Temperature is much lower. I still think that there'd be, and I
Yes.
still have my feelings on the hire.
Sure,
But at least then it's like, this is our guy.
Right.
This is who we wanted. And then at that point, it's like, okay, the criticism is going to come later if he doesn't, because what you're saying then is we're averaging 17 wins a year. And that's different. They're not taking I saw somebody say it's a 3 or 4 year rebuild. I'm like, well, it shouldn't be.
Mm-hmm.
They've averaged 17 wins. They've had one bad season during COVID, which North Carolina, Kentucky, you pick your program had. Poor Iowa State went 2-22. He got fired, and now they're in the Sweet 16 during that year. That's a weird year in basketball. Okay, what you're saying is that if your guy can't get it done, and look, if Frank hadn't had recruits lined up either, I'd say, yeah, it's stuck. It's got to get unstuck one way or the other. But that talk was real, folks. I mean, it was real. This team, had Frank Martin come back, would have had NCAA tournament expectations beyond, oh, hey, Cousinar and Lawson are here. Let's go win. And so what you're saying, if you just shut it down like that, immediately hire Lamont Paris as our guy to get us those extra 4 or 5 wins a year. And then if it doesn't happen, then you go, well, that was not a smart move. But I think given the way the search went down and the factors I've mentioned, that's why people are like kind of disappointed in the outcome, at least right now.
Yeah, I think that there's an optics issue, obviously, that has been hovering over Coach Tanner for some time because of what has happened in different searches. I mean, you go back to the Muschamp search and not really as much Shane Beamer and the, Coach Kingston search. I don't know. I don't know the answer. But I do feel like there needs to probably be a change in the process in Columbia and how they target and interview, because there is always a lot of information. And look, I think they probably in the real world of things, JC, you've hired people in your life. I've hired people. Like in the real world, you get applicants or somebody that you would be interested in filling a role in your company, and you go through an interview process, and then you do another round of interviews, and then you make a decision. But in the coaching world, when you got 1,000 different strings that are tied to all these different pieces, stuff's going to get out. And I think personally, just based on watching it over the years and all over, not at South Carolina, I'm talking about other programs, the good ADs are the ones who they target the person they want, forget all the PR of, well, you didn't do this, you didn't interview enough people, you didn't do that. Oh, forget all that crap. Clean it up, go to the guy that you want and get him. That's it. And those, instead of being open-minded, which I don't fault Coach Tanner for that. That's a business-like way of thinking about it. But in the sports world, it gets you burnt, and he's been burnt 3 or 4 times with this.
And I'll tell you this: these coaching jobs, guys, are high-profile jobs. And I just, because one of the reasons I heard they went with Paris was, he's great in the interview, and if you think about it,
somebody else who's great in an interview and it didn't work.
Will Muschamp, Bart Kingston, Shane Beamer. Shane Beamer, though, wasn't, and I know I've known what Shane's all about for 15 years. And I when they hired him, I was like, well, this is I felt very comfortable just knowing him, that it was going to work out, and it hadn't been perfect, but it's on the right path. And that search actually went a little bit different. That search really was Beamer, Napier, Satterfield, maybe Chadwell, and it ended Beamer, Napier, Satterfield, maybe Chadwell. You didn't have people turning it down in public. The Scott Satterfield press conference was a joke. I mean, and we all knew it, that kind of thing. But I just think that, look, man, it's a lot more like, head hunting in the corporate world. And I know that I'll tell you this right now. Since I left newspapers in 2004 and went to rivals.com, I have interviewed for 0 jobs. And I'm not being arrogant. I was just kind of, I got recruited.
Right.
And that's what happens when you have high profile jobs. Now, there are interviews that take place, but like in football and basketball recruiting, you go after your 4 and 5 stars or your top targets. You're offering them and you're recruiting them, right? When you talk to the players and you kind of do your due diligence on them, that's just to see if any red flags come up. You don't sit there and be like, pitch me. I mean, that's just not, and look, these are sports coaches, man. You know who doesn't interview well? Steve Spurrier. Steve Spurrier got laughed out of LSU because he did. I mean, he's probably just sitting there talking about, well, I got this play called Steamers. We have this play called Steamers, and then they're like, Steamers, what the hell are you talking about? They probably like, who's your defensive coordinator going to be? Well, shoot, I don't know. Somebody who can stop people. I want to call ball plays. And they're probably like, get out of here. And then the next thing you know, he's 11-1 against them and whipping their ass every time they play. And they hired Curly freaking Hall, but they hired a guy named Curly over Steve Spurrier. And, Curly was probably in there like, yeah, man, I was great at Southern Miss, and here's my plan for LSU and all that. What are you going to do in recruiting, Steve, here at LSU? We have a hard time keeping them in state. And he was probably like, well, shoot, we'll win with them or win without them. Go Tigers. That kind of thing. I mean, Dan Mullen, who I know got fired, and Dan's probably on the extreme of this. Miami passed on him, Maryland passed on him, several SEC jobs passed on him until finally his old boss said, he's not really that big of a jerk. And they finally hired him. He couldn't get out of Mississippi State because he's a terrible interview. So Ray is not alone in making, but beside that point, these other guys, maybe they do go through an interview process and a search, but Ray and the Ray Tanner regime, if you will, now is batting 1,000 in the guy that had the best interview is the guy that got the job. Trust me, I have no doubt on my mind Will Muschamp blew Lincoln Riley, whoever, name your coach, probably Kirby Smart and Tom Herman, probably blew them out the water with the interview. Will Muschamp, you sit there and talk to him, and I mean, he's intelligent, and I think he knows football better than maybe any coach in the country. I mean, do we think that Nick Saban, when Alabama was trying to hire him, sat down and Mal Moore was just like, Nick, just tell us what your plan is before we go any further? He's like, well, what? He'd probably sit there and say, kick people's ass. And that would be all he'd say. Do you think Bill Belichick's a great interview?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, come on. So, I mean, Greg Popovich, no, I mean, I'm trying to think of great coaches that, I mean, their job's to go win games. And the interviewing part of it, it's great with boosters and fundraisers until you lose. And it's great on TV, but this is not a TV job. I mean, you have to do media and stuff. And I think Shane Beamer's the exception rather than the rule, and it'll probably turn out that way. God be willing, but it's heading in that direction. But everybody else, I mean, you have 2 others that quite frankly just haven't. And so that was the most discouraging piece of feedback that I got is that it was the greatest interview they had. And I was like, and that's not saying Lamont Paris is going to fail. I was just like, are we really basing on who had the best interview again? I mean, I just.
Well, let me kind of
different. I'll say that the difference in everything that you're saying. I mean, the headhunter part, these interviews, the difference is stark. All you got to do is look at Starkville and the other programs in the SEC that filled with a mid-major coach. There was none of this that went on. It was, we're going to go get our guy. We got our guy. Bye. And that's it. And it's a stark, noticeable difference.
Yeah. And look, man, I'm not blaming Tanner or Chance Miller or the board of trustees. I have some thoughts about those guys here in a second, by the way.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
At all for the information that's out there. That people have to understand that, like the Miller news that was leaking and stuff, that's usually a bad, ominous sign, because there's a reason they're leaking that. There's a reason they're not keeping it quiet. And so that's unfortunate. And I thought Tanner's first football search, everybody was like, that was so embarrassing how that was handled. They interviewed Greg Schiano and Willie Taggart at the end and blah, 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 and hired. No, the Muschamp thing was done. I think Ray kind of got burned a little bit, doing some favors for some people, giving them interviews. So they could say, "Hey, I interviewed in South Carolina or whatever," and that didn't happen this time. Okay, everybody they interviewed had a pretty good shot at the job or was going to get these, but still, it the way it went down, Darren, you're right. That is like dumping gasoline onto a fire that's already burning, based on the resume and all that. And that sucks. It sucks for Lamont Paris.
Yep.
It sucks for the fans. And my hope is after the press conference tomorrow, because he is an impressive guy. When you hear him talk, you're going to probably really like him. So was Darren Horn, but when his introductory press conference, but I think people will like that guy, and we'll see what he can do. And it's nothing that a couple of great recruits or transfers can't solve in the short term, but in the long term, I do think that just how it went down was a little bit, sometimes you got to look out there and see what's the narrative on me and my leadership, and you have to understand you need to avoid that, protect yourself a little bit, and maybe it's out of your control. I don't know. But so that's my 2 cents on it. I'm not going to sit here and beat up on Ray for the next year or whatever. That's not how I roll. But I'm also not going to sit here and twist myself in knots explaining why this is going to be different than Kingston or Muschamp or whoever.
JC Sherbert with the Big Spur, of course, 106 here on a Wednesday afternoon. All right, so you mentioned the job, and this is where the more I've thought about it, I have been a little hung up on the landing spot here. And I'm not against Lamont Paris. Matt, I'll be honest with you, Darren, I am totally opposite of what most people I saw last night on the Big Spur message boards. People were like up in arms over this interview we had yesterday with Gene Henley. And there was a lot of people that hadn't heard it, and they went back and listened to it, and they were like, God, there's nothing about this that excites me. I'm actually on the other side of that, believe it or not. That sounds kind of strange because I know what to expect. And generally you get a bunch of fluff from anybody and everybody, and I've done it myself, and interviewing on other stations and things like that, talking about things at South Carolina, where you beef it up a little bit. He didn't do that. He kind of laid out, look, this is his process. This is what happens. This is what you should expect. And if it's better, that's great. In saying that, though, JC, again, this isn't necessarily questioning the hire, but I think it's more trying to understand the hire. This seems more like a long-term hire to me. And I say that because the information we've received largely in the last 48 plus hours is that BJ Mackey would have been able to come in and kind of calm the waters a little bit. And we have to remember something. I think you already said it. This Coach Paris, or if it was Coach Mackey or whomever, isn't coming into a program that just won 9 or 10 games. They won 18 games this year. And up until the last weekend of the season, there was talk about them being on the bubble to get into the NCAA tournament. They were three wins away from being in it. They were 1 win away from being in the NIT. So this isn't like it isn't right now, JC, but it does not, and it did not, if it happens, have to be a total rebuild. Like a guy like BJ Mackey could have come in with all of his contacts, all the people, the AAU coaches, all the guys he played with that came after him, that have known him for 20 plus years, that understand him. Even with his lack of head coaching experience, there was going to be another side of that for BJ, and the fact that he's going to have doors open to him that Lamont Paris is going to have to work to get open for him. So, I feel like BJ could have come in, and although he might have not been the best, again, I'm not questioning the hire. He might have not been the best guy as far as what have you done in your career as a coach that gives me confidence that you're going to be able to do that here long term. But he certainly would have had, I think, a better starting point than at least where we stand today, where I feel like this is going to go with Lamont Paris. There's always talk about him having to recruit his own team and all that, and BJ would have had to do that too. But I just personally feel like the information I have, it would have been much easier for BJ to get off on the right foot sooner than it will be for Lamont Paris. Do you think I'm wrong?
There's going to be less of a cloud in front, like not a brick wall, but a wall in front of him that's been built by what we've just talked about for the last 30 minutes. He wouldn't have the additional. There are obstacles. He wouldn't have the additional obstacles that are placed in front of Paris.
It's the same reason you hire Shane Beamer over Scott Satterfield. Scott Satterfield's won how many games at App and now Louisville and led Louisville to an amazing turnaround his first year, and then had a bad COVID year. Well, everybody's going to focus on the bad COVID year. And people that are generally going to be critical about every hire at this university because they think Mike McGee is going to walk through the door and go hire whoever. Those days are over, people. By the way, the savior coaches and the savior, you're waiting for, somebody was talking today on the website about they're not committed to winning anymore, and I'm like, dude, the days of the savior coaches are over. I'm not saying they'll never make a grand slam hire, a great hire again, or a known big time name. Let's just call it what it is. It's a name. It's not really fit or anything like that. Those days are over. And I think South Carolina can get even better than those days. I think there's a lot about those days people don't remember. But instead, you're looking at a guy with 71 losses. And a lot of people don't take the time to go back and research, hey, this they had the youngest team in America his first year, that kind of thing. But you know what that sounds like? They had the youngest team in America. That sounds like, in 2019, Will Muschamp had the most injuries in America. And this, that, and the other. And people, Chattanooga is probably the second best job in the SoCon. You hire BJ Mackey. He didn't lose to VMI this year, and no shame in that. VMI is actually better than people think. He didn't lose at home to UNC Greensboro. He didn't, and then people are like last second shot to beat Furman. And you know what that reminds people of? That reminds people of Darren Horn, last second shot to get out of the Sun Belt finally, and that's unfair to Lamont Paris completely. But at this point, because of so many failed hires, you have to understand this is why people are skeptical. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Fool me a third time. And to quote a Big Spurism, we're meeting at Rush's on Garner's Ferry. It's just like that. I mean, why did he lose to Western Carolina on the road? Those kind of things. And so you open yourself up for a ton of criticism when it gets to a hire. Where you're like, well, do we want the guy with the mediocre record, or that's a one-hit wonder, that's a one shining moment resume? And I don't think that's fair either. But if you look deeper, that's how it appears. That's the perception. Or do we want to just get a guy that, hey, guess what? He hadn't won anything. He hadn't lost anything. Okay. And, by the way, he's one of the all-time great players in program history. And I guarantee you Lamont Paris interviewed better than BJ Mackey did. Nothing against BJ. But then that gets into, well, what are you basing your decision? Are you basing your decision on the interview, or are they emphasizing that way too much? Are you treating it more like an open job interview, a wide net kind of corporate filling? Or are you being a headhunter or a recruiter and going out there and getting it done and going to them and doing the convincing for them to come to your school? Those are my questions about the process. And I haven't even thought about that until I was told that about Paris. And I started thinking, I'm like, yeah, man, the interview process, that seems to be a driving force here. And in major college athletics, unless you're a psychologist, which I don't know that anybody in those interviews is, and you can read people so well during the interview, I think it's best not to emphasize that. I think it's best to look for red flags and potential fit issues. But there's too many great coaches who are probably terrible at interviewing, and then a lot of charlatans who are great at interviewing that are terrible, if that makes sense.
Let's hit a quick timeout, JC. No anthem today. Quick timeout. When we return, we'll hit on a couple other things that had to do with the search. What happened with McMahon? What's the story there? What's the story with Sean Miller, Bob Richie? And then I do want to touch on some spring football, and we'll get you out of here. It's been a busy week, no doubt about that. So everybody hang tight. The JB and Goldwater show will return with JC Sherbert.
Hopefully, you won't ever need legal help for a catastrophic injury or health issues from a medical drug or device. But if you or a loved one suffers injury or loss, Motley Rice LLC is a nationally recognized law firm that is right here in Mount Pleasant at 28 Ridgeside Boulevard. Thank you, Motley Rice, for sponsoring the JB and Goldwater show and the Big Gamecock preview show. Visit motleyrice.com for more. motleyrice.com.
This is Mike Mazzell for Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate Road. You know what happens when you sell record numbers of new vehicles? That's right, we take in record numbers of local trades. Despite what the news is saying, quality pre-owned vehicles really aren't that hard to find. You just need to know where to look. Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate and on the web at stokesvw.com. We've got over 1,200 pre-owned cars, trucks, SUVs, and all at a fraction of the price when new. Every vehicle has been inspected and reconditioned, many with the balance of factory warranty. Best of all, at Stokes Volkswagen, you don't need perfect credit to get approved for a quality pre-owned vehicle. And we'll take any trade in any condition, even if you owe thousands more than it's worth. Don't forget, we'll buy your car even if you don't buy a car from us. You're going to love our pre-owned selection, I guarantee it. So come see us today at Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate or stokesvw.com.
Peace and love at Stokes VW.
Negative trade equity finance and new loan, subject to lender approval.
Wando Power Equipment, the trusted home of Hustler zero-turn residential and commercial mowers. There is nobody more trusted in South Carolina than our friends from Wando Power Equipment. They've been providing elite commercial and residential service for over 30 years. Landscape Services have turned to their selection of Hustler zero-turn mowers like the Raptor. Bigger, stronger, faster, and the most durable Raptor Hustler has ever designed. Located on Daniel Island and online at wandopower.com. Wando Power Equipment, owned by the Price family, the home of Hustler zero-turn mowers, rentals, service, and specializing in family and friendship.
Family vacations, a new car, a new boat, all cost money, but you don't necessarily have to make more to afford any of that if you can save cash that's flying out the window now. iHelp Consulting can help you finally get the kids to Disney World, upgrade the minivan, or drop that new boat in the water next summer. Let Daniel and iHelp Consulting consult with you. No fees, just savings. You pay them a percentage of those savings. Save on essential services, credit card fees, you name it. Let them find it. These folks are incredible. iHelpConsulting.com. How can I help you?
It's the best time of the year on the sports calendar, and there's no better place to soak it all in than your spring headquarters. Dog and Duck with 3 area locations in Bell Hall, Park West, and Clemens Ferry Road. Until May, $5 pints of Wicked Weed Brews and Devil's Backbone, again, until May. Patio seating, happy hour daily. Family bingo on Monday, the Duck Truck Double Burger every Wednesday, Rib Night on Friday. It's the place to be for the best wings in town, the best sports everywhere you look. Dog and Duck, 3 area locations, Bell Hall, Park West, and Clemens Ferry Road.
You were listening to the JB and Goldwater show, live, loud, and online.
All right, final segment? I don't know. Maybe it is. I know it's the final 42 minutes of our week. Darren and I will be out of here and off tomorrow and off on Friday. And we'll return on Monday. How about that? So everybody enjoy March Madness. JC, what happened with Sean Miller?
Basically, I mean, look, it looks like there was some shrewd agenting going on, which is amazing because Sean Miller's agent, from my understanding, I think was a blogger about a year ago, but he crazy enough, right? And now look, he's connected with the some of your bigger agents out there. So I'm not saying that that somehow South Carolina got outfoxed by somebody with a light resume, because I just don't think that's the case. It was actually brilliant. I think Miller wanted the best basketball job he could get. And I think that because of his background, those options were limited. I credit Ray Tanner and Chance Miller for taking a swing because I think in this era now, like LSU's probably going on probation. And they may be the last team to ever go on probation.
Sorry about that.
Now, look, Tennessee football and their collective or whatever up there, they need to be careful. But LSU may be the last major program to ever go on probation. So, because you can just do it all. I mean, there's ways you can do it, and it's perfectly legal these days. So, I still don't think his options, because ADs and presidents, they don't, they're kind of risk averse, and that's fine. But I think South Carolina's willing to give him a shot, and I credit South Carolina for doing that. So who else would hire him? Well, his old gig at Xavier, because, they didn't want him to leave. Wife's happy in Cincinnati, all that. So it was unprecedented. And people say it was like Kirby Smart. I don't think it was anything like Kirby Smart. I think if you think about the year before Rick got fired, there was some talk before the Bull in Charlotte, whatever they went to that year, that if he didn't beat Louisville, he's getting fired. And it ended up that was legit, even though it seemed like it came out of nowhere. Credit my partner Tony Morrell for being one of the few that knew that. But this, a guy is in the NIT, he wins, and then you fire him. And it's like, wow, I kind of wish Eric Hyman had done that to Dave Odom, so I didn't have to hear about the war chest of credibility after the back-to-back wins. But anyway, I'll take the banner. I'll take that back. I'll take the banner. He should have been fired after that, though. That was a Sweet 16 team. Anyway, and so then Xavier all of a sudden opens, and you see their insiders who are really good people and connected. I got to know. I didn't even realize we had a Xavier site. And by the way, and again, this kind of shows you where people are at. How about Xavier beating them 15-7 in baseball right before all this happened? I mean, the mighty Musketeers are just like smacking the Gamecocks around. Xavier's a better basketball job, and people don't want to believe that. That's fine. They're not a mid-major. They're in the Big East. Mm-hmm. They play Georgetown and Seton Hall, and I think the Big East had 5-6 bids this year. They usually, if those set 10 teams, they get 7. Marquette. I mean, they're all basketball schools, but they're major basketball schools. Villanova, yeah. I mean, I could list them all. Creighton, Providence. I mean, I know South Carolina, the SEC is tough, and going through an 18-game SEC season is brutal, but man, that's not as brutal as all your conference games are against teams that are really, really good, and which is the case at Xavier. And so they get out there. You don't have to worry about competing for resources with football. You don't have to worry about competing for fans with, you name it, women's basketball, baseball, beach volleyball, whatever sucks the fan base out at South Carolina. The one thing Carolina did do is make a really strong financial offer and some, with some perks put in and some promises. And look, man, I think had the Xavier play not worked and Xavier had said, nah, we're just not going to fire a guy after he wins the NIT game, I think Sean Miller would be the next coach of South Carolina, because I think he was determined to get back in. But if you can get back in and kind of go home in a place you're safe, that if a show calls or something comes down, they're going to kind of take care of you, and you can kind of be under the radar and reinvent yourself. I see the logic in that. It's unprecedented. The whole thing's unprecedented. Coaches usually don't go back where they used to coach. Coaches usually don't get fired after winning a postseason tournament game. But that's, hey, life of a Gamecock, right? Unprecedented things tend to happen. Will Muschamp was the football coach here, guys. So yeah, it's not totally out of the question where we're from, good and bad at times. But so that's what I think happened with Sean Miller. If you ask me about the Hall's Chop House thing, I'll just say I know Sean Miller was in Atlanta that day and leave it at that. I think I'd like to shut up about that subject a little bit because there are some people out there that swear that it happened that I really like and respect, and I don't want to sit here and seem like I'm calling them a liar over something that really doesn't matter. But then there's some people out there that I don't respect on Twitter that continue to propagate it, and those people are charlatans. So I just want to be quiet about it and just be really respectful of those that believe it. You talk about people's beliefs. I'm going to respect other people's beliefs on that subject, and continue to know what I know about his location.
Well, look, we're not talking about it. Don't care.
Okay, good. I was worried we were going to bring that up.
No,
I mean, end of the day, it doesn't matter.
I could care less. I honestly could care less. Who cares? And for what it's worth, and I don't have no problem saying this publicly. If he's watching, he won't care either. I talked to Mike Uve afterwards. I'm not going to repeat what that conversation was like, but I talked to him. All right. And he's good. He's all right. Mm-hmm. So, you move on. Who cares? Was Matt McMahon ever seriously in play?
Yeah.
Didn't seem that way.
And people talk about getting duped or whatever. And I think it just kind of depends on, and again, I believe David's reporting, and nobody's really refuted that to us. Nobody's confirmed it because I wouldn't confirm it to anybody. I would never bring it up again. So something made them fly up there. But again, okay, so, and again, it played out in the media nationally. He picked LSU over South Carolina. Again, it played out in the media. He picked Xavier over South Carolina. That normally doesn't happen in coaching searches. In recruiting, it does, but not in coaching searches. And so, and I don't know, people were like, Frank Martin's out there sabotaging the search. I'm going to tell you this. If Frank Martin were, and he's well respected around basketball, there's no question. People love that guy. I mean, myself included. But that's not how he rolls. He's not going to sit there and, call in a favor and say, hey, could you please mention that this South Carolina was a runner-up just to make him look bad. I mean, I don't think that was the case. So, I just think it's one of those unfortunate things. I think, again, I don't know how the trip to Murray, Kentucky leaked, and I've not been able to confirm it. You want to talk about a leak that was kind of not good? That was probably the leak that wasn't that good, again, assuming it happened. So I would say he was serious in play in terms of what South Carolina's thoughts were, because I don't think they would have gone up there otherwise. But we were told, from the beginning that he would preferred other jobs to the Gamecocks job. And then LSU made him a strong hire, a strong offer. How about that?
Sure.
I wanted
7 years, 8 though, if you can't go to the postseason for at least 1 or 2. We'll tack another one on there.
Yeah, I mean, and that's
I've never seen that before, by the way.
I think the LSU AD is the best in the country. I don't. If they had just fired Will Wade for being Will Wade, which I would have done, then there was no looming probation. Shoot, they may have gone and gotten Scott Drew or somebody. But I think with that situation, it was a masterful job of Scott Woodward to guarantee that, and that's life. An 8-year contract is like life-changing money. And, like if you're South Carolina, do you offer McMahon 8 years, 7, 8 years? I don't think so. I think 5's plenty, no matter how good McMahon was. So, but I don't think that was ever a consideration. I think the Gamecocks, interest in him maybe pushed LSU to hire him over like a Grant McCaslin from North Texas or whatever.
Final 2 here. Had Sean Miller not been the top candidate, would Dennis Gates be the head basketball coach at South Carolina today?
No. Because I think he preferred the Missouri job over the Gamecocks job. Now, let me back that up. That was a hard no. Let me go with a maybe, on that one, because Missouri, I mean, when you talk to people around the country about Missouri's athletic department, not their basketball program, I mean, they have access to talent right there in St. Louis. They, their big rivals, Kansas, so obviously they care about basketball, or was Kansas. It's still Kansas, but they just don't play them anymore. St. Louis is right there. Kansas City's right there. The state of Kansas is right there. Missouri's full of good basketball talent. Illinois is right there. It should be, I mean, if you can win at Arkansas big in basketball, you should be able to win at Missouri even bigger. But when you talk to people about their athletic department and their working environment, and that's one thing I've heard nothing bad about from a people that work in the athletic department standpoint as it relates to Ray and Chance and those guys. People love working for Ray and those guys. Then there is a little negative. So maybe if Dennis Gates preferred a better environment, it was that. I mean, I know that before Mike White popped up, Gates was on the fast track to going to Georgia, and he coached at Florida State, and he's the recruiting aspects obviously there. But at the end of the day, it would come down to Mizzou or South Carolina, and I can't tell you for sure which one he would have gone with. I believe it would have been Missouri, but just some things I've heard, I don't know. But hey, look, it didn't happen. I mean, it didn't get to that because he took Missouri.
Bob Richie, why did he pull out? Hold on. JC, if you don't want to answer the question, don't answer the question. If you don't want
to. I'll answer. I'll answer.
Why, or what is your theory on why?
I think Bob Richie really wanted the job. I believe that totally. Mm-hmm. I think that maybe how it unfolded. Sometimes guys, they get a little discouraged by how the process is handled, and you don't want to sit there. And this is smart, when you're, I know when I've been up for jobs before in my younger years when I had to interview, I interviewed for it and I start hearing whispers about this guy or that guy being in the mix, and everybody's kind of dragging their feet, and I haven't heard anything and all that. I don't want it to seem like, just like South Carolina didn't want it to be like Xavier over South Carolina, or LSU over South Carolina in the search. You don't want to be like, oh, so-and-so over Bob Richie, at the end. Bob Richie was the backup candidate or whatever. You want to avoid that because the guy's 111 and 48 at Furman or something like that. When I talk about resumes and up and down resumes at the mid-major level, one thing I liked about Bob Richie, even though, he hadn't been to the tournament, he's in a one big bid league at a school where you need 1,100 SAT to get into, and he's winning big every year. And Furman basketball historically has sucked, and I think it's wrong to give Nico Medved all the credit for what Bob's doing now. That's ridiculous. And a miracle shot kept him from getting in the tournament.
JC, what separates Bob Richie, I mean, outside of a 1-point miracle shot, from Lamont Paris? I mean, as a head coach, I don't know that there's anything. Is it his time at Wisconsin and what he helped build there? Would that be what would put him over the top over a guy like Coach Richie?
I would have gone with Bob. I mean, Bob would have probably been, once it got past, I would have probably done a little digging with McMahon and found out the truth, not gone up there. And then after it got past Sean Miller and Dennis Gates went to Missouri, I'd have just made that hire and settled everybody down. And the reason is it's a lot easier to say, hey, look, these one bid leagues, life is tough. Dennis Gates didn't make the tournament this year. He hadn't made it but once, but look, he's won 20-something games every single season, including COVID. Exciting brand of basketball. He wants the job. He's from Florence. Maybe we'll see what he can do with a multi-bid. That's much easier to sell, in my opinion, resume-wise, than a guy that's been that has a resume similar to Darren Horn, a one shining moment resume. So that would have been kind of like my justification for Richie as a strong backup, right there, and I gotta, I gotta preface that by saying Richie versus Lamont Paris. I'm not trying to say it came down to those two and Bob should have gotten it. I'm saying that at the point where it got past Miller, and Gates going to Missouri, I think Richie would have been my guy, and it would have already been announced.
That's why it stunned me when I saw that he pulled out, because I don't know exactly what happened there, but for that exact reason, that's why it stunned me. It's possible he was told he wasn't getting it, or he was fifth on the list. I don't know, and I'm not putting words in anyone's mouth, but that's another part to me that really bothered me.
That's why that, and I didn't hear anything negative about Bob's interview or Bob Richie's interview. I can say Bob like I know him. I don't, but I just Bob. I just like saying Bob. I like that movie. What About Bob? That movie's awesome. I'm gonna watch that tonight to heal my darkened soul. But I haven't heard anything negative about his interview. But that's why I think sometimes in the fast-moving world of college athletics, you can't be methodical. You can't treat it like methodically, like you don't want to make a mistake. You got to be a shark, because look, man, the SEC is not slowing down. The college athletics is not slowing down; it's speeding up. And look, had they ended on BJ Mackey and people were, oh yeah, you drug your feet with Bob Richie or whatever, I'm kind of dismissing that. But because they made a tone deaf hire resume wise, and they basically hired a guy with the same resume as guys that have failed, question marks, when the overwhelming majority of the fan base, when it came down to BJ Mackey and Lamont Paris, wanted BJ Mackey. I'd have probably just gone with Bob Richie and said, well, hadn't made the tournament, but he was daggum close. Furman's a ridiculously hard job. Let's roll.
It reminds me a lot. And again, I have no idea. I know for a fact when Mike Young interviewed for the College of Charleston twice, one of those at least, he wanted the job and he said, here's my deadline. And they dragged their feet and he pulled his name out and stayed at Wofford. So regional precedence for if that happened is there.
Oh, I'm with you. I mean, yeah, look, coaches are going to do that, and I think that given Bob Richie's track record at Furman, hopefully eventually he makes the tournament. I'm thinking about going to the SoCon tournament next year, by the way.
It's awesome.
Hanging out in Nashville for a little while, but with a buddy. But hopefully he makes it. And once he does, I mean, like I said, Bob's resume is better, in my opinion, because he's consistent. He's been there 5 years. It's a terrible – guys, I grew up in Greenville, Spartanburg. They used to play at the Memorial Auditorium, which, by the way, heck of a Dave Matthews and Big Head Todd concert there way back. But they used to play at Memorial Auditorium, and people liked Furman basketball. They liked Furman up there, but they were god-awful, They East Tennessee State would come to town and just whip them. Clemson would – I had Dale Davis and Eldon Campbell, I think. They'd head over there every now and then for the hey, we're Clemson game, Furman battle them, and it'd be like a 17, 18-point ball game. So they were, I don't know, they were bad. And they were good in the 70s because they had a cheating scandal, right? Because Furman, I'll say this as a Gamecock, Furman has eliminated South Carolina from the NCAA tournament in the 70s in the McGuire era.
That's great, JC. Thanks a lot.
They cheated and got guys back then. I think they got put on probation. They were never good after that. Larry Davis, who coached, was a great coach, never good. And finally, Medved gave him a shot of life, and then Richie took over. And I remember in Greenville, we interviewed Richie. So I guess I have talked to him before when I was on a radio station up there, and he was the interim coach, I think, for the CBI or something, and he got it. And I remember thinking he probably should get it. So, and look, I'm not sitting here bemoaning that they lost Bob Richie. Oh my God, he's the next Coach K. I'm just saying that in hindsight, and people, hindsight critics, whatever, you know what they say about them, but that's probably the direction I would have gone to avoid where we're at right now.
Yeah, I mean, look, we can only judge this largely, JC, on resumes.
Yeah,
and the resume that we get without doing much more research, a lot more research, is wins and losses. Period. The end. I mean, where have you been and what have you done? It takes some deep dives to figure out who guys have recruited and how they've recruited and the ins and outs of a program. Those are all things that come out in the interview process, which Coach Tanner and anybody else doing interviews would have that information. The one thing that is glaring, if it's glaring to you, it's glaring. Some people would totally disregard it, and that's fine. I'm not saying you're right or wrong, because I don't even know what to think. But the one thing missing from Bob's resume, as opposed to all those other candidates, is major time spent at a major program. He's never done that. He's been he played at North Greenville, he coached at CSU, and he's coached at Furman, and that's it. All these other guys have spent time somewhere else. Even Matt McMahon, I mean, he was a grad assistant at Tennessee when Coach Beamer was up there, and Marcus Satterfield, so they know each other from their time. And he's been at Murray State forever until now, but he had spent some time at App State. He'd spent some time at UNC Wilmington. So he's dabbled in different areas, I guess, if you want to consider that. But at the end of the day, with Matt McMahon, his resume is outstanding because he wins like 30-something games a year at Murray State, and that kind of speaks for itself, right? So, but everybody else has been somewhere, done something, including Lamont Paris, and he has been largely credited, as we found out in the last few days, with being the lead recruiter for some of the stars that they developed at Wisconsin. And so, that it is where it is. We're not going to go back and forth about whether they should have hired somebody else, because it doesn't matter. That's who they hired.
Yeah.
And we'll see what it looks like. But
and I think it's very fair. The Wisconsin part of it is very fair. But I also think this. I think in basketball, recruiting is kind of it's a smaller operation, personnel. Like in football, you have these star alpha recruiting assistants, and they're up in there and doing this, that, and the other, and what they can do. And basketball, there are guys out there like that here and there, but your head coach does a lot of it, I have no doubt. I mean, Lamont Paris had Tyler Hero committed to Wisconsin before he took the Chattanooga job. So, and we know what he did because he was in Kentucky. So that's a fair point. Bob Richie certainly didn't have that experience at a big time program that was having big time success.
Yeah, and I don't want anybody to misunderstand me. I'm not saying that's why he didn't get the job or anything. I have no idea. I'm just looking at the resumes, and that's just one thing that I looked at and said, well, I mean, God, the guy wins a lot, but he's never really been anywhere. Maybe that was a major factor for Coach Tanner. Maybe it wasn't. I have no idea. So, all right, JC, before we get you out of here in just a few minutes, wanted to touch up and brush up on some Carolina football. I know that the assistant coaches, I think Coach Gray, Coach Stepp, and Coach Limbo meeting with the media today. I just saw some of our friends, I'll have to text them after we get off the air here, reporting that Pete Limbo wore jeans to the Morgan Wallen concert. What the hell is going on up there, guys? Give me some real stuff
to wear.
I don't know, but apparently Coach Limbo went into some whole spiel about how he never wears jeans, but he wore jeans to the Morgan Wallen concert. So they're really getting some hard-hitting information out of the assistants today. This is good news. I'm going to text Hale and Whittle and figure out, can somebody ask a question so we know what the hell's actually going on the field, with the players, guys.
Yeah. I want to know.
Be something.
Yeah, I want to know how that place kicker, Parker White's gone, man. We need to ask Pete how's Mitch Jeter doing, man? Come on.
So, Pete, what would you thanks to Cloninger. Mitch Jeter's doing well as the starting place kicker. Well, right on cue. You can leave it to DC. DC doesn't mess around, man. He's the first question. He gets in there.
It doesn't matter what it is either. Hey Pete. Dave from Post and Courier. Let me just ask you this. Do you think that Mitch Jeter's a shoe-in for the job, or are you just going to let him kind of compete and work it out? And when do you have to plan to have a decision by? Thank you.
Yeah. Hey,
Quality.
look,
It just rolls out there. No, I love it. And I love Dave Cloninger.
I did too. He's a great guy.
Fan, and I'm probably I wasn't trying to make fun of him. I do impersonations, it's out of love. But you can always count on him having the first question. Like if one of my guys or Gamecock Central or the state or anybody has the first question, I'm shocked.
Oh,
It's always Dave, man, and he's hustling and let me just ask you. And he pontificates too. I like that too about him.
yeah, he's. I love DC. He's a great. I wish we could get him on more. The schedules keep conflicting, but he's wonderful and he's a great reporter. And he's solid, man. Somebody had the first question over him one day. I can't remember who it was, Darren. We might have talked about it on the air or something.
Colin or Whittle could have had a first question, or it could have even been Hale. We talked to whoever it was.
Yeah.
I remember that not long after it happened.
And they were like, yeah, he kind of glared over like, hey, wait a second. Like that's me.
The scary thing he's Dave's old school reporter, a newspaper guy, and he may have called information. I'd like the number for the Columbia FAA, please.
Yeah.
Hey, this is Dave. You have any flight plans from Owensfield to Murray, Kentucky airport? He's already written it down, and he's like, is that just kind of a direct flight, or is it cargo? Is it, or would that be a university plane?
DC, we love you, man. We know you're not watching now.
No. Yeah, I don't know, man. He may get mad at me, but I hope he don't do it, man. I just I've been working on that for a while because he sounds like a famous guy. The guy, in some ways, one of the sports guy from Anchorman that says whammy all the time. His vocal inflections are a little bit like that, so I've taken that. And he probably doesn't talk. He doesn't talk that. He doesn't talk like that. That's probably that's me. Smoking too many cigarettes. I'll be self-depreciating there. But no, I love Dave, man. And Dave is like, if we didn't have him asking the first question, I would just think everything had gone to hell. Every press conference I've ever listened to, it'd be like if Todd. No, it wouldn't be like that at all. But let's just say I'm a huge fan of his. Much respect. If I ever got a chance to hire him, I definitely would. I mean,
yeah, he's good.
I have that. I'll put my money where my mouth is there. But he likes newspapers and all that. So much respect for him and who he is. Not only as a reporter, but a human being.
He's great. Did get a question too through the app here. Nathan asks, how important is the fan base's opinion on a hire and how often are they correct? That's a hard question to answer. I guess you'd have to take the temperature of the majority and how often have they been correct lately? Probably too often.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like and like I said, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Don't fool me a third time. And that's it. I want to be clear with whoever said that.
Nathan.
Nathan. I want to be clear.
Nasty Nate. We call him Nasty Nate.
All right, Nasty Nate. I want to be clear. I'm not sitting there saying Ray and Chance and then Pastides and everybody should have just taking a freaking poll and let's hire, who do you want? And then the poll closes and you're like, all right, there's our guy, although sometimes those hires would have worked out a little better. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying is you have a fan support problem in that sport anyway. You had a guy that, would coach in games that could get a team on the bubble in February in front of a half empty arena already. After he took you to the Final Four, you have a very much show me approach by fans in that sport anyway. Now, the crowds in the NCAA tournament that year were second to none. You'd have thought Duke was in the building wearing garnet and black. I mean, they're huge.
Well, I was in Greenville, and that was an outstanding Gamecock Nation. If you want to call whatever you want to call it, was unbelievable.
And I'll tell you this, JB, as great as that was, I don't think it was shocking to me because I was at the Marquette game.
Yeah. You were? I should have waved at you.
You didn't know who I was then.
Well, I knew who you were. I just didn't, I didn't really want to talk to you.
I was on a date. One of the few blondes I've ever been on a date with.
No, I was on the floor where the media guys are, and I'd already pissed everybody off because I didn't know where the food was. And then I finally found the food, and I kept going in and out with the food. And then I came out and I couldn't find my media seat. So I sat in somebody else's. That's mine. I said, well, hell, I don't know where mine is. So I sat in someone else's, got kicked out of that one. And finally I went and asked somebody, I said, hey, where's my seat? It was all the way at the end, of course. Nobody cared where I sat. So I pissed the whole floor off. But
some of those media members that cover that regional were freaking ridiculous. And
dude. I remember meeting Jeff Goodman in the hotel, the guy that used to work for ESPN. What a snobby brat that guy is.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever. I may have shaken his hand once. A lot of those basketball recruiting guys, they're all like, yeah, they do a good job, but they're a different breed,
dude. Just the way that he treated people, I was like, who do you think you are? Like, all these other guys were fantastic. There's some wonderful people there. I mean, I met Chris Webber. He couldn't have been kinder. And Jeff Goodman acts like he's Michael Jordan. I was like, dude, who are you?
The guys that cut their teeth covering basketball recruiting, which Goodman did, they're all like that. I mean, and they're really good people, but they do have that edge. And I think, man, you're trying to get scoop in that world, AAU basketball. You probably should have an edge, and it's highly competitive because there's not that many players to report on, and there's only a few schools. It's not like football where I could go cover Wisconsin football recruiting or Michigan State for a living, start a website and kill it, reporting on 3-stars all the time. It's not like that in hoops, and it's because you had to deal with like guys now that are agents and stuff, and your Eric Bossies of the world, your Evan Daniels, your who was the big guy that went to ESPN? I don't know, but it's not easy. Basketball as a sport is much tougher to cover. I'm not making excuses for anybody being a butt, but I just it's.
Well, it was just I feel bad now because I don't want to degrade the guy. I met him and spent 2 minutes with him, and it's the last 2 minutes I really cared to spend with him. But I mean, outside of that, he might be a wonderful person. He was just the way, not just me. I kept watching him. I was like, this guy, man, he thinks he's big time around here. But whatever. Chris Webber was big time. He was cool. By the way, I also
did you look at him and go timeout?
That's exactly what I would have done.
Hey,
what's up, buddy? Hey,
he was super. He was. Once I finally found the food, I also found him in there, and he was chowing down. But I also got kicked off the floor because I happened to walk out there with a water bottle that didn't have the blue NCAA logo on it.
That is the screamed rookie for like an
Darren, totally. I was like. It was embarrassing. I mean, it was embarrassing. I was like, dude, what am I doing here? You know what I mean? Because I'd never done that. And but I was really surprised because I talked to Derek Scott on the floor, and I said, man, I just got kicked off the floor because I walked out here with a water bottle without the blue logo. He goes, oh, that's a big no-no. Yeah, you can't do that. Yeah, if you don't have the blue NCAA logo on literally everything when you walk out of that tunnel, you're going back in. And so anyways, all right, JC, word is that, the couple bang ups to be expected in spring practice. You're going to be very careful with those guys. And I know there's a bunch of hammies they're worried about and things of that nature. Nothing crazy there. Everybody wants to talk about Spencer Rattler. They're going to name him at some point in time the starting quarterback. It's expected. The question I have, we have 4 minutes left with you. It's bigger than that. This is the second straight year that this has kind of been their MO in spring practice, naming a guy in the spring as the starting quarterback. That never happened under Will Muschamp, and it never happened under Steve Spurrier, although largely we always expected Connor Shaw or whatever. Just kind of, I don't know. How would you explain that? Is it better to have a guy coming out of the spring or better to have a competition going into fall?
Well, it depends on the situation. Just like the basketball search, it's not so much the search, it's the situation, with other all you got to consider everything. I think with Spencer Rattler, It's clear he's the best and really the most experienced on the roster. When you talk about college football starts, I think that, when you're dealing with the transfer portal, I don't know that you want to bring a guy in that was a Heisman front runner and stuff, and then, artificially prolong it, trying to, milk whatever out of him, because he's going to be the guy. And, I think that when you're talking about seniority with however 16 starts or whatever, I mean, he's maybe not your school, but he's earned it. And I think that sets a good precedent for your ability to attract portal guys. Portal guys don't want to come in and go through a bunch, if they're older, and going through a bunch of BS, and I'm not saying that's BS. I think it just depends on the situation. Number two, I think what that allows you to do is, because Spencer Rattler is new, you tell the team, you tell the public, he's the guy. Okay. So off-season workouts, which are voluntary, where he's the guy getting everybody together to go through. He's the guy that's out there. Your quarterback is your leader. All right. And they didn't name, I think Shane mentioned Doty was the starter last year after the spring game. And I expect it to be earlier this time, just so, because he's a new guy, all of a sudden, you don't have this thing where there's this competition and people are wondering if Doty's going to win it or not. You just say, he's the guy. Everybody else start to learn your role. And I think that's a wise way to do it. And I also think it would, from a fan's perspective and from an observers and analysts and folks like us perspective, I think you sit there and you maybe interpret that as, hey, he hadn't had any problem picking up the system. So, and I think that's a positive thing.
Yeah, I just didn't know really aren't we only concerned about 2022? It's just some coaches, they like to get it out of the way. Some coaches like to wait until the fall. I mean, I thought last year it seemed clear that Doty was the guy, but as time went on, we realized, well, I don't know. So we'll see down the road if it's a trend. That might be their thing in Columbia. They want to name a starter in the spring and move forward, and then everybody else has something to shoot for. If that's what it works out to be. All right. Well, we're out of here. JC, or at least you are. We got a couple more minutes. I will tell you, I know you're a big fan of all of this. And when I get to the mountains tonight, I can celebrate one of them. But it's National Puppy Day, and it is National Chip and Dip Day. Oh. So maybe you and Red could share some chips and dip together.
I'll put him some food.
What type of chips does Red like? Is he a sour cream and onion guy?
He kind of he'll eat Doritos, man. He actually likes Doritos. He's a Dorito guy.
Cool Ranch or nacho cheese?
Nacho has to be he don't like. He'll sniff the Cool Ranch and pass. And he's gotten older, So now, whereas he used to eat just about anything except like vegetables.
Yeah,
he's sometimes passing on. And Nat made a corned beef the other night. He passed on corned beef.
Oh,
hell, man!
What's going on with Red, man?
I don't know, but then sometimes he'll and she kind of has taken over the feeding him job, and so she'll sit there and cut up chicken and all that, and I'm like sitting there praying. I'm like, please eat it, because she's gonna get her feelings hurt. And, and I'm like, God, it's like when my mom makes something and somebody comes over, or somebody used to come over to the house. I'm like sitting there. They always ate it because my mom was a good cook, but I always sit there and go, what if they don't like my mom's cooking? Because that's gonna cause some problems. A little tension there, it's my mom, But anyway, sometimes she gets disappointed because
is Nat like my wife, where she makes something and it's delicious. I mean, Carrie, I don't think really makes anything I've never liked. She's a really good cook, and she pretty much everything she makes. She goes, well, it's okay, or it's not that good. I didn't. I'm like, oh my God, shut up! It's delicious.
Same thing. I don't know if you like this. Clean. I don't know if you like this or not. Now, Nat's Thai, so the Thai food stuff is always money. I'm not a big Asian food guy, but I've actually become that way a little bit. Yeah. But anything else too, any of the Chicago specialties or anything, she makes. She's a very, very good cook. She enjoys it too. She enjoys it too. I have much appreciation for that. And then she'll always make sure the dog. She'll be in there chopping chicken in the morning. Like, what are you doing? Oh, I'm feeding Red.
Yeah, Carrie's. I just don't like it. I'm like, it's a turkey sandwich. What's there not to like about it? The turkey tastes weird. I'm like, well, if it does, it's not anything you did to it. You bought it at the store.
Complete jerk and throw it at her. It's like, your mayonnaise distribution's way off base, ma'am.
Too much salt. Not enough Dukes.
Not enough Dukes. Just throw it out. That'd be awesome. I'm going to write that in some kind of screenplay or something. That's a great scene.
That's a line for Duke's Mayo. Too much salt, not enough Dukes.
Duke's Mayo needs no more publicity.
No.
After the bowl game, man, it's like, and then like a couple days ago, hey, more Duke's mayonnaise on it. Listen, we get it. We love you.
Yeah, I know. Shane, I wonder what they're paying Shane on that deal. That was interesting. We need to send him a note there. All right, I got to go, JC. I got to get the hell on the road here, but you have yourself a wonderful week. If there's any other coaching changes, deal with it. I'll be back Monday, and we can figure it out next week.
Right,
I'm so over this. I'm tired.
I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend and have fun up in the great Smoky Mountains.
Yes, sir, Babaruski. Hey, man, have a wonderful week. Thanks again. The Big Spur, they got you covered. By the way, you always do a great job, but John Whittle has been phenomenal with his coverage of the hoop stuff. He's always an honest person with what he knows and what he can say, and so props to John Whittle. What a outstanding job.
I don't have enough words to describe like what a great
human he is.
Human, but he's a stud in our
good.
Does a great job.
He's good, man. He is really good. Thanks, JC. See you.
Right, see you guys.
Later, there you go. Yeah, Craig, we are tomorrow morning. We'll be up and over there at Joey's about 7 a.m. when they open, because the kids won't sleep past 6:30.
Got to start entertaining them by then. May as well.
This is supposed to be my vacation. Somehow 3-year-olds are ending up in the back seat. So, all right, Darren, have a great weekend.
You too, man. Have a safe trip.
Yep, I appreciate it. And if anything breaks between now and Monday, you figure it out. See you then.
We'll see.
Thanks all y'all. Have a wonderful, wonderful week. It's Wednesday. If you're in the Low Country, the Dog and Duck's got those smash burgers, and they're unbelievable. Put them in a brown bag. They're unbelievable. Take them home. French fries, wings, you name it. March Madness is tomorrow, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. What a fun weekend. Don't call Darren. He'll be in front of a TV somewhere with beer.
I will.
We'll see you Monday at noon on the JB and Goldwater Show.